you go. All right. So welcome, everyone. This is our first Dig Your Photos user group meeting, and I had a great response. Some people couldn't make it at this particular time because they're not in this time zone and not even in a near time zone, or had other things shuttling people around and whatnot. But they are going to be watching the recorded version. So definitely, if you have a question, possibly they do too, try and also just, ask the question, because probably it will help someone else. To start with, I have a little slideshow to go through, and then we're just going to open it up, and we're just going to share and learn from each other. But again, thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone showing up. So I'm going to just do this, and then I got to go back to Zoom. All right, can everybody see this view graph on the screen? Dig Your Photos user group meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, so this is our first Dig Your Photos user group meeting. I would like to have them quarterly. You don't have to show up if you don't want to, but each time I will be giving some tips to keep you motivated, to keep you going, and also open it up to ask questions. I think even in the future, or even today, I could give each person maybe 3 minutes to ask questions and share what they've learned or what they're doing, because we can all learn from each other, right? So without further ado, we'll just go. I'm going to say, yay, confetti, our first one. Very excited. And thank you for supporting Dig Your Photos as well. So if you don't know me, I am a photo manager. I'm a certified photo manager for 8.5 years. I created Dig Your Photos because I realized there was a gap in the market of allowing and helping people to organize their own print photos in their own home, because the best person to organize someone's print photos are the people who know the people in the photos. So that's why I created it. I'm also a speaker. I'm an avid traveler, and I'm an inventor. I just want to really help people save their stories. So the agenda today, I'm going to have to move you guys because you're in my way. The agenda today is just a little intro. I did mention, but some people came in late, that I'm recording this for others to be able to watch at a later time. I'm going to be sharing some tips on the overall process, and then 1 or 2 tips on each of the different steps. And then there'll be time for questions and answers. So, and also I would love it if you all ever took pictures, or if you do take pictures of you working on your projects using Dig Your Photos, if you sent them to me or you posted them with hashtag Dig Your Photos, or you could tag Sunflower Photo Solutions. That would really be amazing. I'm just so interested to see how other people are progressing. Oh, and yes, there'll be a discount if you want to purchase one as a gift for Mother's Day. May get there in time, not sure, but or for some other type of gift. There we go. So I don't know how many people have opened it up and started Dig Your Photos yet. You could put it in the chat. You don't have to, but if you haven't, it's okay. I found most people, same with reaching out to a photo manager, just to know it's there makes them feel more comfortable, because they could, you can start it on your own time when you feel settled. And the same thing when people reach out to photo managers, as long as they know you're there, they feel more comfortable. But I just want to give you some data points on how you're not alone if you have some print photo chaos, and reasons why people have it. So last year in the US, existing home sales were greater than 4 million. So that is 4 million existing homes that people are taking their stuff and moving it to a new home. And so most often that is predicates them wanting to organize, pare down, and get organized with their stuff, including their memory collection. Oftentimes it doesn't happen, and we all say, I'm going to do it when I get to my new place. But if this is you're in this boat, you're not alone. You're with a lot of good company. Last year, the deaths in 2023 were almost 3 million. So not only do people have their own stuff and their own photos in bags and boxes, but now they're inheriting another generation's stuff. And most of it gets discarded. But what people do not discard is the memory collection. I just need to admit someone. The memory collection. And so now people have their own stuff, and a generation removes stuff. And every time you remove a generation, you're losing the story. So, I feel like it's very important to get the photos in order, whatever way you choose to do it, before you end up handing it down or inheriting it from another generation. This is an interesting one. Every day in the US, 10,000 people turn 65. And that's 4 million people a year in the US alone. And what happens at 65? A few things. On either side of 65, people are thinking of downsizing or possibly have, and they're trying to consolidate their collection of everything, including their memories. Also, when people turn 65 or maybe slightly older, people start to want to share the stories. They reminisce, and they want to have that connection with the generation below them or their grandchildren, 2 generations. So they're looking to organize their photos and get their stories in order to be able to share them. Now, this next one, photos taken in the year 2000 was greater than 86 billion. And I picked the year 2000 because this was kind of like when digital cameras became accessible to the general public. They weren't totally affordable yet. That was another probably 4 or 5 years later, but they were accessible. But think about it. If 86 billion photos were taken, how many were printed? Because remember, back then, we printed way more photos than we took, because if we actually managed to get that great photo of our child taking their first step, or, our other child kicking a goal for the first time, you wanted to have copies so that you could give it to grandma or to, your aunt or uncle or sister. So there were probably 50% more than 86 billion photos just printed in the year 2000. And then lastly, the top 5 scanning companies' revenue is over $100 million. And these are the big box ones where people just throw their stuff into a box. And if you're a photo manager on here, what do you get when you just throw your stuff in a box to be scanned? You get digital spaghetti. So it's very important to organize the photos before and pare them down to save money, time, and the cost of scanning the photos, and have a usable collection. So these are just some data points, but if you have your photo chaos and you're in the beginning of attacking it, or you haven't yet, you're not alone. So I'm going to first open it up before I start my tips and ask, what's your favorite thing about Dig Your Photos? Even if you haven't actually gone more than maybe step 1, or even just read the instructions, what do you like? You could put it in the chat, or you can go off mute and just tell me. I'd love to hear it.
So I'll go first. I have on Friday my very first vendor event in probably 20 years. And so I am really excited about this, because so many times people are like, oh, I have to put them in some sort of order, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. And so this, I'm hoping, speeds up the process, and that then they feel like that they're doing part of the work also, and not just me.
That's great. You'll have to tell me how you do.
I like the idea that it's already a box that can be part of the engagement with the customer as a first start. Um, uh, Kind of like what Kathy was just saying is it helps the client to figure out what at least give them a guide when you're not there to know what am I supposed to do next? And it's right there. They're used to QR codes now because of COVID. And so if they need to look at the videos, they can look at the videos. And you're not even spending the time, but they're actually doing, quite a bit, but it's like a free gift to them as part of the engagement. So they're getting something right up front if that's how you position it.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm very excited. I'd like to, yeah, that's really my thought process was. So thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay. If you think of something, you can put it in the chat, and and then we can all learn from that. Okay, I'm sharing my screen again. Alrighty. So let's get into it. So here are some tips for the overall process. Start small. You don't have to start with your entire memory collection on a big table. You can start with one box at a time, one stack of albums, one, bag of photos that you have. It's okay. And it's actually better that way. It makes the process quicker and easier and allows you to learn all the steps, maybe even in one sitting, in a couple of hours, and allows you to feel successful and keeps you motivated to keep organizing your photos and attacking the next bag or box. So that is my overall suggestion. And I really want everyone to be successful. So at least start small in the beginning.
Rhoda,
Yeah.
how do you define memory collection? When you first started, you said, that people don't get rid of their memory collection. Does that include movies and all of this, or is it just how do you frame a memory collection?
So
Is it
as
just
a photo manager, I frame a memory collection to include everything that contains memories, and that includes the real film and the videos and the slides, negatives, print photos, digital, everything that's digital, which is also movies and photos, as well as memorabilia, letters, certificates, passports. It's all about a
okay?
memory, including,
Okay.
they don't have them anymore, but like ship manifests that people have saved because they've come over. As far as Dig Your Photos is concerned, this really is touching the print collection, not the reel-to-reel films or the movies or the slides, but mostly photos, letters, memorabilia that are physical, that you can touch.
Okay.
That's a good question too. So let's go through each of the steps. The first step is hunt and gather. And what I would say, especially if you're starting for the first time, attack your albums, or if you only have a certain amount of time to work on it. Let's say you have, a couple hours before you have to do something else. Attack a stack of albums. Albums usually are telling a cohesive story in some way. It may be the story of a person, so it may be, little Daisy as she's grown up through the years and all pictures of her, or it could just be all pictures from a certain time or a certain vacation. So by taking them out, you won't have as many categories, and it won't be as hard to date them, because usually they're generally in a rough time frame, similar time frame. When you're sorting and into gold, silver, bronze, and trash, I always like to say use the 2-second rule, which is literally looking at a photo and deciding, you instinctively will know where it belongs. And the more you do it, the better you'll get, because people really are reticent to put things in the trash, especially if there's faces on them, but unless they're a duplicate. But it's okay if it's not a good photo, if you have a different photo that's a much better picture or a series of photos, you can get rid of most of them. And you'll get better at that. You'll feel more comfortable. That being said, there will be times where you want to look at the photo and maybe reminisce, or it brings up an emotion, good or bad, and you need to process it. So give yourself a break. You can. Just in general, most of them you can go through fast, but there'll be some that you want to, really spend time on. As a matter of fact, I tested this out on my son at one point, and he had so much fun. He was like, this is really fun. But what he had most fun with is just actually putting the picture down, taking a picture and sending it to people, his friends or cousins or, siblings. So it's okay. You can take some time out of it. It's not a rush to the end. It's a process, and it's a process for you, remembering things, your memory, as well as an emotional process, as well as an organizing process. It's not a chore. It's an activity. So have fun and invite people to do it with you. If this part of, if these albums contain things with your mother in it or your aunt, do it at Thanksgiving when you're going to see her, or Mother's Day or something like that, because really it's a bonding experience to go through the photos, but also you may get stories that you didn't know or didn't remember while you're organizing the photos. So that is my suggestion, as well as don't forget the story pile. Sometimes there's a story there. Sometimes there's a photo and you keep seeing that similar photo over and over again, and you can't understand why it's there. Ask your relatives. There probably is a story there. But you know the stories as well. So, use that story pile, the bronze pile. So creating the family timeline actually doesn't have to be step 3. It should be done before step 4, where you're categorizing, but in actuality, it can be done at any time, and it can be done at the same time as steps 1 or 2, because this is really a guideline for you to understand where the photos fit in within your family and how they lived and where they lived and who lived with you. So you could even farm that out to, if you were doing your memory collection, you could farm that out to your wife or your husband to fill out the family timeline, and then you can create it together and decorate it together as a family. But it doesn't have to necessarily be step 3. It could be done in conjunction with step 2 or step 1, or a separate activity even before you decide to open the box. I have to let somebody in. And the last piece of advice for this user group, but also for the family timeline, is that when you are creating your timeline, leave room so that your photos on the timeline are not on top of each other if they're not within the same time period. Meaning, if you're doing it by decades, you don't want 1990 here and 2000 here, because there's not even enough room for you to put the 1990s photos without touching your 2000 photos. So just kind of like eyeball it and leave enough room, for the average photo, which is, most of them will probably be 4x6s. And when you're categorizing, I say not perfect can be perfect. We don't really want to overthink it. It's not rocket science. So if you don't know whether it's 1990 or 1991, it's okay to create a category of 1990-1991, which you can see here, I did. But then there's certain ones where I actually knew exactly when it was. So it's hard to see probably for you, but on this slide, it says summer 92. I knew all those photos were from the summer of 1992, just because of who was in them and where we were. But you don't have to be perfect, and you can go by decades, or you can go by half decades, or you can go by you know, even when I'm organizing by time frame for a client, and all of a sudden there's all these photos strewn throughout of different cars, but you cannot tell the date or the time or anything else with them. I make a category called cars, and all those go in there. And it's okay. It's okay to mix your categories of dates with a separate category. If you have somebody in your family who is an avid fan of, let's say, cars, and you find that there are a lot of car pictures and they're from over the years of your life together, you can have a category of cars. It's what you make it. And also, the next tip is use those index cards as dividers. Now, again, the box itself is temporary storage, right? So in the bottom photo, you see that the photos are lined up, upright in the box, separated by, you can see index cards, and those index cards literally are the what you categorized by. Here are their dates. That's the top view of them with the gold photos in front, and then starting with the silver right behind it. And then that's temporary storage until you decide whether you're going to scan them, who you're going to have scan them, and what type of archival safe storage you would like for those photos. And then once you do that, it's ready for your next group of photos.
Rhoda, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In the family timeline, you know, sometimes we have multiple family timelines, I guess I will say, because you have you know, some extended family, and then you have maybe some real your real personal family. I know this is by time. Do you just say at this point, hey, we're just putting in to try to identify the time period, no matter what the category? There isn't like lanes of family timelines. You know, you have a I don't know, a wife pass away and you get remarried, and you know, and there's still the other family timeline going on, but now there's a new, I guess you'd branch, if you will. Is this just really chronological right now? Only you're not really putting a
I think that there's two aspects of what you're asking that pertain to how I view this being used. So it's not like a genealogical tree where you have branches.
right.
It's definitely on the surface chronological. So you could certainly have, you know, Eli and Gertie get married in 1938. Gertie passes away in, you know, 1950, and Eli gets married to Marion in, you know, 1952. And that's all in a chronological lane. But that being said, I can see that if you have generations or different family photos from different families, that you actually organize them separately with their own chronological timelines, and not overlay them, just to save from a little bit of confusion. So, you know, if I inherited, as I did, my father's side of the family, and I also, my mom's still with us, but I have her side of the family photos, I would do them separately. So on the actual physical timeline paper template, well, I would use the template on the website for each different family. And then I would create a timeline for each one. So on one side would be one, on one side would be another. And then if I kept going with my own family, which, you know, hopefully we would up until we were all digital, then I would have a third timeline for that.
Okay.
And then I
And
can, oh,
then you can put them in actually more than one box if you wanted to, right? I mean, just do the same thing, just duplicate.
yes, exactly. And if you do it that way and you want to keep it separated, even though Dig Your Photos is your temporary sorting box, if you're not ready to have everything scanned until you think your collection is done, you can use other temporary boxes like a shoe box, or, you know, other types of boxes that they sell at craft stores.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, of course, everybody has one, I think, that's on here. What comes in Dig Your Photos, clear instruction cards with video support, the tools. I'm going to talk about the gum eraser because there was a question about it. The toolkit, family timeline template. Don't forget to use the resources that are on the website under resources, because that really is a good way to organize where you lived and all the family milestones that you had in your life, as well as what pets you had. And that really is a good way of timing your photos. And of course, the sorting box. I'll just go to the gum eraser, which is in the picture. I don't know if you can see my mouse right here. You can. Okay. So right here is the gum eraser. That is used to erase any residue that you might have. Mostly it's on the back of your photos. Oftentimes, if you have had taken photos out of an album and there is, it's the sticky magnetic album where you have to pull off the plastic and then kind of get the photo out. You might even have to use that palette knife. Sometimes there's residue on the back of the photo. I found that the gum erasers are the best ones to get rid of that residue, and it kind of peels off as you are going over it with the gum eraser and almost balls up, so you can just then like brush it off. I found also sometimes in albums, but a lot of times in frames, people use like double sticky tape to keep it in where it needs to be in the frame. And when you pull it out of the frame, you also have residue on the back of your photos. And you definitely want to have a clean back of your photo without any residue, because you don't want them sticking together when you start sorting them and putting them in piles. And also, if you do scan yourself or in a scanning company, it will gum up the and cause problems for the machine itself, the scanner. So down here at the bottom, if you are going to purchase a Dig Your Photos as a gift or for someone else, here is a 10% off code, user group, which is our user group here. And feel free to share it with somebody else if you want to. I'm happy for you to share it. So now it's your turn. I do have a question before it's your turn. I do plan on having these user group meetings for, quarterly, so every 3 months. Of course, you can always email me, no problem, either at info@digyourphotos.com or at rhoda@sunflowerphotosolutions.com. But here's something I want you to think about. You don't have to answer me right now, but maybe moving forward, especially as we get more and more people interested in participating. I'm thinking about having a closed Facebook group so people can ask their questions, and everybody can kind of learn from each other and share their what they feel and how they did things. So think about whether that would be something you were interested in. Okay. So now it's your turn. Anybody have questions? Come off of mute. And I'm going to stop sharing. Let me just say something. Okay, yeah, I think that's the last one. So let me stop sharing and go back. Any questions? No?
I asked you so many at conference. I don't feel like I have any.
Okay,
I'm
that's
just
good.
hoping to sell a couple on Friday.
Right. Excellent. Amazing.
I just have a comment. In our business, we do a lot of we take a lot of stickers off and a lot of sticky stuff, and we use a product. It's a little plastic. You can get it on Amazon called Scotty Peelers, and it's spelled just like Scotty. And we actually have just a little now heat gun. You got to be real careful with the heat, but it's a heat gun and actually glue gun with a microfiber towel, and it's also amazing what a magic eraser will do and take off. So, but very not wet. just, make sure it's just damp. That's it. And that actually works if the eraser doesn't work for you.
All right, thank you. I'll definitely try that if I get stuck.
I've got a question. I've got thousands of photos. And how do I get motivated to process all these? I've started on magnetic albums, and I had purchased this spatula from Amazon. And well, at first I tried dental floss, and that like cuts into your fingers to get pictures out of those albums. So I bought this spatula. I have actually bent the spatula getting pictures out. And I've done several albums, and I mean, it's so time consuming. It's just overwhelming. And then I've got like boxes and drawers. And my parents have passed, my sister passed. So I've inherited all that stuff.
Yes, it's
And I've got all the pictures in frames. And then they're going to have to be taken out of frames to scan them. And then what do I do with the frames, or do I put them back in? And I've got so many pictures. I've thought about buying like archival boxes to put them in. Because once I start sorting, I mean, right now I don't have enough room to even put them someplace once they're sorted.
yeah. So my advice, first off, my question is, do you have Figure photos?
Yes.
Okay. So there is also I call it a palette knife, but it's like a spatula that can
Yeah,
help.
I haven't used that yet.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
opened the box and looked at it, and then a bunch of other things have happened in between, so the pictures were a lower priority.
Yes, that's life, right?
Get going.
Yeah. So my suggestion would be to start very small and starting with the albums, even if you only said my goal is just to do 3 albums and go through the process and see how that works for me. I found that even with albums, most people will have some that will go into the trash pile. So you are kind of naturally paring down your collection. But not as many will go in the trash as if you started with a box or just a pile of photos that weren't the best of the best. Because in the thought process of albums, people are being very intentional and they're creating the albums with what they consider the best photos, usually, not always. Sometimes it's just to get them somewhere, but oftentimes. So I would say start with the albums, and again, pick a quantitative amount, like maybe 3, get everything out of those albums, and then move on to the next phase. And learn the process, and then you'll get quicker at it. And it's okay to just do a little bit at a time. You don't have to feel overwhelmed with seeing it all at one time and feeling like it needs to be done immediately. It's okay to just kind of gradually do it and enjoy the process. The last thing I'll say too is about frames. Photos and frames are what we consider the best of the best photos. So if that's the only copy, definitely we would want to scan that for the future. And then it's up to you whether you want to put them back in the frames or you would just rather not have them in the frames and not have those frames on the wall. If they've been on the wall for a long time, chances are once you take them out of the frame, you're going to see how they've faded. You'll actually see a difference because you pull it away from the glass, and where it was covered by the frame will have a brighter quality to it than the photo that was under the glass. So you may not want to.
Okay.
Does that help?
a little bit, except I've got boxes of pictures that are in frames
Yeah. Yeah.
that aren't even hanging on a wall. And
Well, then I would say that you want to get them out of the frames because they're taking up space. That's not necessary, right? And
Yeah.
there's no no reason to hang on to that. Just, and do it while you're listening to music or a book, and you can just take them out of the frames and, you know, you may find that even there's information on the back of those photos in the frames.
well, there is. My mom was very good about naming who was in the pictures, the dates, and where they were taken. So I've got like chronological. So on the timeline that you talked about, then you spread that out on the table and put your photos out like under that timeline.
Yes. Yes.
And then what if you can't leave stuff spread out? Like on my dining room table is where I do it, but then I have to clear that table too for
Yes.
when people come over.
Yes. That's why, first off, I like to do small bits so that you don't feel like you're leaving things out, or if you don't leave it out, it's gonna get disorganized again. But if you have to clean it up, then you just use the index cards of the ones you've already sorted, and you stack them up and you put them in the sorting box. And if it doesn't fill up the sorting box, you just put something in there that's going to hold it upright until you're ready to attack more photos on that timeline. You could roll the timeline up just like it was and pack it all back up.
Okay, and part of the problem too, I've got like 2x3 pictures, 4x6, 5x7, 8x10, 11x14.
Yeah, so figure photos will hold up to 5x7 photos, but you can find wider shoe boxes that can hold wider ones, or you can actually have them, if they're 11x14, you can stack them flat and just keep them separate. But you might have a 1990s then in the sorting box with your 4x6s and 5x7s, and then you might have another index card with your larger photos in a pile that say 1990 as well. It's just a matter of size, and that's even with archival safe storage. Typically we do things like that. I'm not going to store tiny little photos with an 8x10 or a 11x14. The other thing I'll say is you may find that your 2x3 photos are duplicates of what you have of 4x6s or 5x7s, 3x10s. And so you don't need both of them.
Yeah, and see, I do genealogy stuff too. I've got photos from back in the 1800s.
Well, that's
that,
amazing.
yeah, and all those need organized. I've organized them by family
That's
right
great.
now.
Yeah. Well, they should be in archival safe storage then for sure. I'm just going to open it up to see if anyone else has any questions too.
So
Otherwise, oh,
I just wanted to add to Kathy, like, just small chunks, like even one album, it just feels good. And this may be obvious, but if it's like a landscape picture that you know you're not going to keep, don't even bother taking it out of the album. Just keep it in the album. Don't take that time. If you're going to be throwing the albums away and putting them in archival and getting them scanned and digitized. So, because I have got pictures too that go back, and can seem overwhelming, but it's just a little bit at a time. And I would suggest with you just starting, like maybe no more than like an hour at a time. Otherwise, you're going to feel like I'm never going to get this done because I need like a whole day to do this, but you'll be surprised in an hour how much you get done, and do a hard stop at an hour until you figure out how much time your brain can handle, because it is a lot and it mentally uses your brain and it brings back memories.
Great advice, Kathy. Great advice.
One of the albums that I had was so stuck, it took me about 3 hours to
Wow.
get all the pictures out of one album.
So,
That's part of the reason I feel overwhelmed.
Do you
so
have local family, Kathy? Do you
Yeah.
have any family?
Pardon?
Do you cook something that's really good that everybody likes in your family? Or do you have local family that could
I
come
don't
over
have
and
local, I don't
okay.
have local family.
No, okay. All right. I was just going to say if you had, you know, a lot of times family will love to take a look and it just creates excitement and actually is helpful and actually is more labor, I mean, to help you.
yeah, that's great advice as well, to do it as an activity. The other thing, I'll say two things. One is that you can always maybe work with a coach to put you on a little bit of say let's just attack this one album and I'll check back with you in a week. And sometimes just having somebody who is you're being accountable to will really motivate you and help you get through it until you can feel like you can do it on your own. And then if the album that you had really stuck photos in was a magnetic album, one trick is also, if you couldn't get it out with a palette knife, sometimes if you put it in the freezer for less than 5 minutes, 5 minutes or less, the glue that's holding it actually kind of crystallizes and you can then get the photo off. Don't leave it in there too long because you don't want it to get wet.
Okay, I'll try that because I've got several more albums that way, and I just hate the thought of spending that much time taking pictures out of an album.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? All right. So you can let me know by email or just put it in the chat if you think this was helpful and if you would be interested in keeping it going. I'm going to definitely do it in another 3 months anyway. So if you're on the fence, not a big deal, but between getting questions offline and helping people use Dig Your Photos, I am definitely improving the process and coming up with better tips for everyone. So I really, really thank you.
I've got another question.
Okay.
Archiving boxes. Do you recommend archival methods, or is there another brand that you recommend?
Yeah. So I typically use archival methods. I like them for their customer service, their quality, and the choices. So they seem to have the most amount of choices for sizing and types of media. So I have used them almost exclusively, but I also have used Native Archival. They have a less selection, but they also are archival quality and they are good looking. So it's just a matter of taste and need.
Yeah, I've noticed Amazon sells archival boxes too, but I don't know about quality or
Yeah.
anything about those.
Yeah, I can't speak to the quality on Amazon. I have not investigated it. But I would definitely, if I were gonna do it, read the fine print and make sure it was archival quality for photos and not just for other things. All right. Well, I guess that's it. I really want to thank everyone for joining me, and again, reach out anytime with questions. Feel free to share that code with anybody that you would like, and I look forward to seeing you again in 3 months.